On Thursday, May the 6th of last year, a man by the name of Alexander Jesiewski arrived in Rome and took a room in a hotel on the Piazza di Spagna. He registered as an Austrian citizen, born in 1911, and a widower. His occupation he did not fill in, perhaps because he did not know how to translate it into Italian. On the morning of the 7th, he booked passage on the Auster, which was to sail for Buenos Aires from Naples on the evening of the 9th. In the afternoon of the 7th, he visited various places of interest in the southern sections of Rome, including the Appian Way. Either at the church of Domine Quo Vadis or at the nearby temple of the Deus Ridiculus, one dedicated to the Christian, the other to the pagan deity of return, he would have done well to have taken the hint and turned back. But, unfortunately, he did not do so. He went on to the church of Sant'Urbano, which contains a side entrance to the catacombs of Saint Praetextatus. While looking around the church, he asked the custodian whether it was true that, some time before, 2 French priests had entered the catacombs from the church and had never returned. The custodian replied in the affirmative, whereupon Jesiewski remarked that he planned to come back the next day and go down into the catacomb to search for the vanished priests. Jesiewski's Italian was not of the best, but the custodian managed to get the drift of what he was saying. He told Jesiewski that he himself was not authorized to conduct him into the catacombs, nor would anyone else be willing to do so. These catacombs, he explained, were for the most part unexplored, which was doubtless why the 2 priests had lost their way and perished. The visitor would, therefore, do better to remain in the church looking at its famous frescoes. Jesiewski replied that he did not want a guide and would be able to find his way by himself. The custodian pointed out that by now the bodies of the 2 lost men must certainly be in a state of advanced decomposition, but Jesiewski cut short this and other objections with a generous tip. The next day he came back equipped with candles, a suitcase, and a light coat, and, ignoring the renewed protests of the custodian, crawled through the entrance to the catacombs beneath the altar of the lower church, pulled suitcase and coat in after him, and, like the 2 priests, was never seen again. The custodian waited until evening. Then he sent out an alarm to the personnel of the nearby catacombs of Saint Sebastian. The personnel heaped reproaches upon him for having permitted the foreigner to enter the catacombs at all, and set out at once to look for the missing man. All attempts to find him proved unsuccessful, including the search instituted by the police and directed and supervised with the greatest care by Professors F.B. de Grassi and Innocente Bazzi, eminent authorities on subterranean Rome. It was not even possible to distinguish Jesiewski's footprints on the dusty floors of the passageways from those of others who had been there before him. The catacombs of Saint Praetextatus, like those of Saint Sebastian, of Saint Calixtus, and of Domitilla, comprise, in addition to the familiar passages through which visitors are conducted every day, a maze of further passages, not entered for a very long time, and said to be connected with the passages, galleries, and tomb chapels of those other catacombs that form a wide arc about the city of Rome. The foreigner could very easily have lost his way and died of starvation. As is well known, the Italian catacombs, and the Roman ones in particular, were the burial places of the first Christians. The word is Greek, and originally denoted a receptacle hollowed out of a hill, in other words a sand or tufa pit, into which the corpses of slaves and criminals were thrown after they had been worked to death. But even in very early times, the bodies of martyrs were put into these often quite inaccessible cavities, then called crypts, to prevent their venerated remains from falling into the hands of the pagans. And since it was the wish of many Christians to be buried near a martyr, because they hoped that the body of a saint would give some protection to their own bodies, these places were gradually extended to form entire underground graveyards, or coemeteria. On the anniversaries of the martyrs' deaths, the congregation would assemble there to hear Mass and receive communion. In times of persecution, Christians would take refuge in the coemeteria, although they were, all too often, pursued even under the earth.